So trans are just like cis, but yet not. So how?
Arabic numeral?
I always found Asmongold being wrong with his opinions on trans folks, and especially his chair too.
I am Adolf Hitler, command of the Third Reich!
Because it is really just understanding gender as a whole and the realization of advanced biology, which not many people are capable of going that far in school. Do you then find that he is wrong? Which then literally just means that gender is not based around chromosomes, since intersex folks exist, but in fact around body hormones level, aka puberty, and the brain structure of gray and white areas. And therefore the self-identity and of course the mental challenge of not liking what you wear, something that also cis people are under the influence, which shouldn't be possible because all of the transphobe say is that trans folks are a separate kind of human who is less worthy. And yet the cishet will cry just as much when being placed in the wrong body.
A disorder, an illness, or something like that.
Okay, here's a question. Let's say that we're 20 years into the future, we have brain transplant surgery. Let's say that I take your Rob's brain and I put it into a cis woman's body. Let's say that you wake up and you're like, this feels really wrong. I feel like I feel like a man and now I'm in a woman's body. Would you say that that's a disorder, that you have a disorder there?
I would say I have a disorder, an illness, or something that's wrong physiologically or mentally with my body, yes.
And then what is the disorder?
The disorder is that my brain is in the wrong body.
Okay, so what is a solution for that?
Put my brain in a body that more aligns with what my brain is.
Okay, you just stated exactly. Okay, I love you. You are the most trans-positive conservative I've ever argued with. So that is exactly the position that trans people take, is what you should do is you need to make the body match.
So what's the difference between trans and cis folks? How do I begin with this? So there are gray and white area spots in your brain which it's naturally is different compared to cis men and cis women. Now, studies have shown that trans women have brain spots compared to women, and as it turns out, so they are very identical, and the same thing can be said for trans men and men brain spots. This is one of the areas where the trans brain says, and I wish to be, without realizing that it already is for what it's hoping for. So therefore it's not the inside that is wrong, but the outside, and the expression of gender and identity. And if you put a cis man's brain inside a cis woman's body, wouldn't it be very likely that the trans man person would experience some kind of sadness of self-body identity? Secondly, is after a trans person's brain after HRT more likely than the gender that they identify as, like trans woman for a cis woman, and the same thing for trans men and cis men. Pay attention now, I'm saying cis. This is because the body is a representation of hormones production, which means that the human body is more likely to be genderless, like the fetus itself and children in general, as it was this way in our old culture. This means that now that chromosomes don't matter, but in fact hormones and puberty matter. This means that when a trans person is given hormone replacement therapy alongside the proper medication for it, does it mean that once the trans person will just be cis? But many trans people after HRT are not agreeing on that.
No matter how much I hated being trans, it would not make me cis. And I had to really sit down and reflect on myself and do a lot of inner work to come to terms with that. And it was hard. It was really hard to sit with that. It was really hard to kind of break down all the internalized misogyny and internalized transphobia, especially as somebody who grew up in the southern United States, in Texas. It's a very red state. A lot of people weren't understanding of my transition. But yeah, a lot of people that I was surrounded by when I first came out and when I first started transitioning were not supportive or were not understanding. And I think that was a very big influence on me because I was just constantly hearing negative things about myself, and I kind of internalized that and I made it like this internal mantra, like, oh my god, being trans is so horrible, being trans is so unnatural, like I'll never be truly happy. It took me completely changing the world around me as well as my internal worldview to accept the fact that, okay, I'm happy with who I am. And it took me a long time to get here, and I feel like it's something that maybe a lot of other young trans people are struggling with, the same way that I was struggling with it when I was young and freshly out and newly transitioning. And I just wanted to kind of explain my reasoning as to why I'm no longer miserable in my identity and why I no longer wish that I wasn't trans. Yes, being trans is hard at times. It can be really difficult, but there are so many things that I would have never experienced. There are so many things that I would have never tried. There are so many people I would have never met if I wasn't trans. You know what I mean? If I had shut down and maybe stayed in the closet and stayed identifying as female. There are so many things that if I hadn't started T when I did, or if I hadn't gotten top surgery when I did, so many things that I would have missed out on in my life, so many people that I would have never met, would have never made friendships with, a whole community online that I would have never cultivated and created, you know, with my platform on TikTok and Instagram and YouTube here. All of that stuff would just be gone, and I don't want that. Like, I have created such a great life for myself, and I don't want to say despite the fact that I'm trans, because I've learned now that being trans is not an obstacle that I've overcome, but it's a part of my identity that I've embraced.
Many, in fact, did not want it to be a cis woman or cis man. They wanted to be themselves, and nor after the proper puberty, for the brain is the brain themselves in the correct body. This is gender-affirming care, and also euphoria. Further studies prove my claim. A low percentage rate for the regret for gender-affirming care in the genitalia area alongside with no phantom limb pain. Which is in my reason because again of the brain not being assigned to the body, but the body is perfectly fine, so therefore the only limb pain that can exist is from the brain out itself. And this assumes me that for trans folks is dysphoria the direct link to the correct brain in the wrong body, and therefore the brain creating an entire phantom limb pain situation, just not in the body, but in fact from the brain out. So let's recap. Trans women are like cis women but are nothing like them. The same thing for trans men. Also intersex people exist who have different chromosomes than the cis counterparts. And science defines gender on sex and not oversimplified one grade biology and chemistry. And cis folks can be affected as much by gender dysphoria like my trans siblings. And gender identity is inside the brain, which you can see in the structure of it itself. Which then also means that cis people are also never truly cis, since the structure of it is not always 100%, but just a high percentage that can be seen as high. So cisgender is not one big thing, but a big percentage of a spectrum. Every statement is correct, even though it looks like that they seem to disqualify each other, and yet they are still correct. So how is that possible? Gender is a spectrum. I know, crazy, right? The spectrum has no walls between the side female and male, nor is there an X point to be female nor male. But it's an area of the set gender. But this also means that also people are not X point, but also just inside of the spectrum and inhibiting it with their set surface area. Since not all cis folks are all the same, therefore is everybody's surface area different, and this is also for trans folks and non-binaries. Values like culture have, by the way, here no ground, since culture is not based on nature or gender, since every single one is different. And that's it. Gender is a spectrum. Trans women are on the surface area of the female spectrum, just like cis women. Therefore are trans and cis still the same, but yet different. The same thing for trans men and cis men. And non-binaries are in between. Gender fluids are fluidly, and there exist also 8 billion other genders. At the end of the day is a world where men can get periods and give birth a better place, since bleeding out once a month sounds inherently in a patriarchal system where they keep telling that being woman is all about femininity and being pretty not really feminine, since you have to be strong to go through that, which is the opposite of what they preach. And science and nature is even proving my claim. Male seahorses give birth, and lions have from time to time same-gender sexual intercourse, so there's also nothing really genderly on periods and giving birth. At the end of the day is cisgender gender norms based on self-gender regulation, like you are a boy, you are therefore not allowed to wear a skirt or wear makeup. This is because masculinity is often seen as less regulated. Being masculine can be everything like fighting a bear or falling down a hill. Meanwhile, femininity is more regulated. You have to be skinny, be pretty, and obedient, and so more. But the only way a man can be seen as less masculinity is to overstep the boundary of femininity and doing what he wants. And that is a type of so-called toxic masculinity. Girls have no problems playing with toys that are usually for boys. This is because fathers have no problems with raising a masculine girl, aka tomboy, but have problems with femboys and not wanting that your child turns out like that. A male in a skirt will get more attention than a female in a baggy jeans with short hair. Luckily, times will change, because they always do, but for the better or worse is just unknown.